In the late 1960s and 1970s, early 70s, there was a wave of student protest on US campus, US universities against the Vietnam War, and that resulted in a lot of political change, a lot of political turmoil, but that sort of disruption was necessary to end one of the most disastrous UN foreign policy decisions in modern history. And since then, there have been many other disastrous foreign policy decisions, the bogus Iraq war in 2003 being one. And what we are going through now, it can only happen, whatever is happening in Palestine can only happen with the endorsement of the US government, Democrat or Republican. And at this point in time, we are seeing a surge, a movement of student protests on campus and campaigns. So welcome to episode 83 of Teh Tarik with Walid, and that is precisely what we will be discussing, the student protest in the States. And I have with me somebody who is a journalist. She's on the ground. She is a master's, she just graduated in journalism in Columbia. She just graduated yesterday, I believe. And Angelica is her name, and she will be speaking to us. She has written quite a bit on this. She's done a fair bit of reporting. As usual, feel free to type in your questions if you have any. And I just needed to say also yesterday was the anniversary, if you can call it that, of Nakba, which is a great dispossession of the Palestinian people. Overnight, Palestinians became refugees in their own land.
Hi,
Hi, Angelica.
hi.
Congratulations first and foremost. Your graduation was yesterday or today?
It was yesterday.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Thank you.
you are, you were already a journalist before this, right? Like you've been writing and your stuff has been published. You wrote something in the Straits Times as well about the campus protest.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's start there. So what do the pro-Palestinian protesters wish to achieve? And have they been successful? Sorry, there's a bit of echo at the back, I think. Is there
There's a bit
something
of
else?
echo.
Yeah. As
Is
in
it
I can
okay?
hear myself.
Oh,
Yeah, okay, it's okay. Yeah.
it's okay
Okay.
now?
Can. Yeah, it's
Okay,
okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, as to this question, no, but first, thank you for having me, Walid. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and everybody for tuning in today. I think, as for the request, I want to refer to an email that was sent out by Columbia University's president, who is Minu Shafiq. So, um, sorry, my bad. So the protesters basically had three key demands. The first one was divestment, which was that it was for the school to divest like all funds um, from corporations that were benefiting from the war in Palestine. And the second one was financial transparency. So for the school to be fully transparent about all investments, direct and indirect, um, in the different shareholders. And the third one was amnesty. So amnesty for the students or staff that had spoken up um, on behalf of people in Palestine and who were involved in the setting up of the first Gaza solidarity encampment on our school's lawns. Yeah. And as to whether or not they have been successful, I feel like that's a subjective question because I think if you're talking in terms of like addressing the three demands, then it's definitely hard to say yes because in our university's response, I think with regards to each one, for the first one, there was an email sent out on April 29 by our president who said that our university president, Minu Shafiq, who said that the school wouldn't divest from Israel, but they proposed like an alternative, which was, I quote, to develop an expedited timeline for review of new proposals from the students by the Advisory Committee for Socially Responsible Investing. So this is a body that considers divestment matters and that students can submit proposals to. So
So we are
essentially,
going
this
to
offered.
consider divestment without saying that we are considering divestment. That was what the email was about.
I think she's saying they're not going to divest, but yeah, but that they would expedite proposals to consider divestment. So
Okay.
that
Sounds
was,
like a
yeah.
lot of wordplay there. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh-uh.
that's with regards to the first That's with regards to the first request from the pro-Palestinian protesters. And the second one on financial transparency, what the school president said was that they would allow students to access a list of Columbia's direct investment holdings, but that precludes the non or indirect investments. So there's still a degree of opaqueness in the school's investments. Yeah, so it's sort of a meeting you halfway kind of attempt for the second demand. And as for amnesty, I was reading the school's communication, and I think in an email that they wrote on April 30, they said that students who remain on the encampment in the lawn would face suspension, and then those who were in Heinz Hall, which was the building that was taken over by the pro-Palestinian protesters, would face expulsion. On the grounds of like expulsion, I'm actually not sure whether they followed through with that comment, but I know that for the first round of arrests, which was way back a few weeks ago, that when students were arrested and suspended, most of the students, I think from Barnard College, they received like conditional amnesty, which let me just pull it up. I think they were granted amnesty if they were to agree to a few demands, which was firstly to agree to comply with all university policies in the future, which I'm assuming just includes not protesting.
Does
And the
that does
second,
it include not protesting?
I
You think
think
it does? Yeah.
yeah, I think from what I spoke with when I spoke with people on the encampment, that's what was echoed. But I do think I would need to check on that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Okay. Right.
and the second one was to complete an educational project. So they have to have a 60-minute meeting to review the student code of conduct and then also write a 100-word reflection paper. And then the third one is like a probational period. So only if they agree to all three, then their suspension would be lifted. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you are analyzing it quite methodically in terms of the demands and whether they have been successful. What about, I guess, demonstrations, activism? A lot of it is performative, right? It's about putting up a performance, not just for the university management, but for the general public. So have they been successful in that regard, at least?
Yeah, I think definitely like conversations about Israel and Palestine have become a lot more mainstream, at least on our campuses, ever since the Gaza Solidarity Encampment was put up. And I think even people who didn't originally have very much of an opinion of the war or conflict were sort of forced to think about it simply because um, it was so prevalently on our lawns. And I do think that that was successful in that respect. And also, um, it did like the first Gaza Solidarity encampment and the subsequent arrest by the NYPD did actually spark a lot more students to come down to the second encampment because whether it be like the being there in support of like the pro-Palestinian supporters or just sort of showing up to be there for their peers who they feel were unfairly arrested, it did gather a lot more support and traction in the school community. And I think that includes not just students, but also like faculty members, staff
So
members. It was,
the arrests were good for the cause.
it did further it, I would say. Yeah, and I think it also sparked, as you'll probably know, like all the other Gaza Solidarity encampments in different campuses. So yeah, I do think it was successful in that respect.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So since you are that, by the way, your background, you are Singaporean, right? So you did your undergrad here or overseas?
No, I did my undergrad in NUS.
Okay, so and that was
Yeah.
in life sciences, I remember,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah,
just
it
took
was
a
in
wild
biology.
turn. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, to journalism. Okay, so and you are, I guess, in a position to compare uh, the level of these courses at universities, right? Although you were not here post October, right? So maybe there's still a difference. But what is the difference in US campuses, the discussions on Israel and Palestine versus in Singapore, the Singapore public consciousness? Do you see a difference?
Mm, I feel like to answer this question, it's I found that a lot more people here generally have an opinion on issues that are sort of international and beyond our shores, which I found personally very meaningful. Like the fact that you care enough to read and to think about it, process and opine, I think is something that maybe I didn't experience as much when I was in Singapore. I'm not sure whether it's because of my own social circles or the courses that I read,
Yeah, it's because
but
it's in life science, that's why.
yeah, maybe probably
I'm kidding, I'm
honestly,
kidding. I think it's a bit better in the
honestly.
social sciences, but still
Okay,
definitely
okay.
not I mean definitely not comparable to that. I think
Mm,
perhaps it's changing. Someone told me, one of my friends, student friends, she told me that this incident is young Singaporeans' foray into foreign policy, because even before this,
mm.
if they are interested in politics, it's usually domestic politics rather than foreign policy. And this was really the first time that you see young people discussing en masse about foreign policy. So maybe now
Mm,
it's a bit different, but it's shifting. It's not like completely changed, but it's slowly shifting, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry, could you straighten
yeah.
your camera? Like,
Oh, straight
is
to
it possible? Oh,
left,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, sorry,
All right, all
sorry.
right. So, no, no, it's fine,
Yeah.
it's fine. Yeah. So yeah, what is the tone and tenor of the protests? Because if you look at a lot of mainstream media outlets, which I'll get to them, like
Hmm.
they have really been covering this quite unfairly. But you are there, and it is completely different from people who are on the ground. They're posting videos. It's a very different vibe. So I see dancers, I see like it's very welcoming. But of course, these are all snapshots, right? So what is the actual feel from what you have seen yourself personally?
Yeah. I think and this is something that I think my classmates who were reporting on this as well feel that um the protests outside our school gates and the Gaza solidarity encampment within our school gates had a very different tone. And this is just speaking to like Columbia University in specific, but like the encampment that was in school was honestly very, very peaceful. It was there for like around 2 weeks, and I think the narrative that was sort of prevalent in mainstream media was that it was dangerous and it created like the environment where students couldn't feel safe to walk in and out. But I think it was just from an observer standpoint like incredibly well organized. It was very structured, and I think they had things like time planned in for teach-ins where like students who are like from Palestinian backgrounds would talk about their families, the stories, and the war, and
Hmm.
share with students on the encampment who may not have been from that background um, about what's happening on the ground and from a personal standpoint. And there was a very real effort, I think, to educate everybody on the encampment about what was happening, what like the different chants mean, um, and I think for me that was very, very heartening because it's like you said, like the protesting is very much a like a showmanship thing too. But I think on the protesters, um, for them, they also did gain a lot from just being there, just like
Hmm.
learning together. And there was even like a library that was set up, like it's called the People's Library for Liberated Learning, where they curated a collection of books for people to read that was sort of to counter things that they think they didn't see in the school's curriculum. Yeah. So that was
Wow.
really very, very
How
amazing
how
to
many
see.
how
Yeah.
many of these Palestinian students, as I'm assuming they're from the
Hmm.
Palestinian diaspora?
Uh,
So, or
Actually, really not all of them are.
so
Yeah,
some of them
I
are
think
really from Palestine, like they just
some
move
are.
over for, okay, right,
Yeah,
right,
some
right.
are, and like we have had some who are like also we have had Palestinian students, but also students from many different backgrounds who were leading and participating in the movement.
Yeah.
And
Now, how many of them were
yeah.
giving the speeches that you're talking about, the educational speeches?
Oh, I don't have a specific number, but they really had a daily schedule. It was written out on like a
Wow.
whiteboard. So it was like
Wow.
9 a.m., 10 a.m., like general assembly, and then people would come together and listen to like daily updates on what's happening on the ground in Palestine. Yeah, and then there would
Wow.
be like, okay, prayer times. Yeah, so it was very clearly written out. And
Okay,
yeah,
okay. And it was very multiracial, multi-religious?
yeah, it really was. I think on the same day we would have like Muslim prayers and then like also Christian prayers and um as I wrote in my Straits Times article, the Jewish holiday Passover was during two of the days where the Gaza Solidarity Encampment was there. And actually the Jewish students for
For Palestine.
Jewish Voices for Peace in Palestine were one of the main organizing groups
I see.
in the protest. Yeah, so they actually organized like the Seder meal, which was it's like a meal of significance to celebrate Passover, and everybody while they ate sort of learn about the different components of the meal and what it means in the Jewish holiday.
Mm,
Yeah, so I thought it was really super meaningful. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so because it's not a surprise because a lot of younger Jewish Americans are liberal.
Mm.
I mean, even before this, like a lot of them have always expressed consternation at the occupation, right? So it's not really a surprise. And Colombia, of course, is extremely symbolic as well, right? It's very apt that Colombia should be the center of this because the late great Edward Said was at Columbia, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you can say not say his intellectual successor, but Professor Rashid Khalidi, who actually holds the Edward Said chair, right? Who's the world's preeminent Palestinian historian or a historian on Palestine, I would say.
Mm.
So it's really apt that it's happening there. So, what are the numbers of the protesters in Colombia from what you see?
Um, I can give you the arrest numbers, or like, do you mean like generally on the
Please give me
encampment?
arrest numbers and all.
Okay,
all the,
so I
yeah.
think the first round of arrests, which was after the first Gaza Solidarity encampment was up for a day, there was over 100 students who were
Wow.
arrested. Yeah, and then I think the second round of arrests, which was after the Heinz Hall takeover, was also over 100 people who were arrested. Yeah.
Wow.
But I
Okay.
think for the 2 weeks that I was there on the encampment when it was like relatively peaceful,
Okay. You were
wouldn't
not
say
arrested,
like
right? Just to
hundreds.
check.
No, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
No, they chased the press out during the arrest. So
Oh,
we were chased
okay.
out, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you okay. So I mean obviously they didn't want the pictures and so on. Okay. Okay,
They
got it.
didn't, yeah. But
Yeah.
a big group of us, like student journalists, were on the ground during the Hein Hall arrest. It's just that the arrests themselves took place in a separate building, and then after, when they were actually taking place, we were already sort of evicted. Yeah.
Okay. Nice, nice. So basically, is it a somber mood or is it celebratory or what? How was it like at the protest? Did you feel like it
Mm.
seemed at times it was extremely somber, at other times it was like a carnival-like atmosphere? Oh, how was it like?
Yeah, I think in the times when the encampment was there and it was like peaceful, I would say that it was not really I wouldn't say celebratory, but I feel like the sense of solidarity was very, very strong. Like I think like you saw in the Instagram feeds, there would be like Palestinian dancers and people all sort of participating in song and dance together. And I think it was very much appreciation for like the Palestinian people and their bravery and their culture as well. Like there was a chant that the protesters always say that it's like we are all Palestinian. And I think
In our
just
thousands,
walking
in
around,
our millions? Yeah.
yeah, and I think just
Yeah.
walking around the campsite really, really felt that because we had students from all different backgrounds, but like everybody was wearing their keffiyeh. They had like dogs on the
Yeah.
campsite with their
Yeah.
keffiyeh around their necks, and it was just yeah, a very strong show of solidarity. And I think even in the face of like the school administration sort of threatening to move them off the lawn, everybody still voted to stay, and many were willing to risk arrest. Many were willing to risk like suspension. Yeah,
Okay. 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 Right.
yeah,
So thank you so much. I mean, it's really heartening to see, right, that especially younger people. Well, who you know, a lot of people make fun of younger people, myself included, and we make fun, of younger people. But it's heartening to see when younger people do this, like for a cause bigger than themselves. where they are really putting things on the line for other
Oh,
people. And yeah, sorry, yeah, please.
no, yeah, I wanted to add too. I think when so like the one of the main channels of communication was Instagram, and every time like there were news that like the NYPD might come down or the administration might clamp down, they would basically call for support like from the student body, and everybody would come out to support and sort of stand around the encampment, protect the protesters. And that was just amazing to see. Like, I think there was once that they actually called to mobilize near 12 midnight, and students just like poured out from the buildings just to
Wow.
stand around the field, the
Wow.
encampment. Yeah, really just to like form a human shield, just to be there for the people who were within the encampment.
Right.
Yeah, and I've also seen people walk past sort of like offering protesters like, do you guys need anything? I know you guys are like maybe missing physical class, so is there anything I can do to help and things like that?
Right.
Yeah.
So what was, by the way, for anybody who has any questions for Angelica, feel free to type them in. So one of the things that, I mean, this is normal. This is a strategy that has been used for many, many decades to delegitimize any pro-Palestinian sentiment, movement, activism. They would say that, oh, there's anti-Semitism. And then somebody says it, the media runs with it and then portrays the whole thing. And then they will say things like, oh, there are posters here. I saw videos, but nobody actually saw anything. But once
Yeah.
it spread, right? I had a conversation with a colleague who said that, oh, I saw this London protesters, there were posters. I said, what posters? I was there, one of them. I didn't see any of this. Can you show me the videos? That person said, oh, I saw it, but let me find it. And obviously there was no such video. And I saw the same tactic being used this time around by mainstream. I
Yeah.
mean, I saw the exact same thing. They were trying to paint this as anti-Semitic and so on. But what did you see? Because you already hinted at it just now. You're saying that Jewish Voices for Peace was one of the organizers. So,
Yeah.
but what did you see? What else did you see? Can you speak to that a little bit?
For sure, yeah. I think the Jewish students are actually a very big presence within the Gaza Solidarity encampment. And one of the earliest protesters that I spoke with actually said that they are out there because they feel that like they're not okay with the school using this as grounds to sort of close the encampment, because they said like, oh, it's you're saying that you're closing this, you're not allowing people to protest like on campus in the name of our safety, but we don't feel that way. So we're out here to say that like not in our name.
Mm.
Yeah. And yeah, I do agree with you that I think there has been sort of a conflation of all these protests with anti-Semitism, and I don't think it equates necessarily that way. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, anti-Semitism exists, right? It's existed for the longest time. But the weaponization of anti-Semitism whenever somebody criticizes Israel, right? I mean that. Although I have to say, this time around, it's really not working as much. You know, people are not so scared of being alleged to be anti-Semitic for criticizing Israel, right? Because everyone sort of sees through it this time. It's as silly as saying if you criticize the Saudi regime, right, then you are being racist or you're being Islamophobic, right? It's as
Yeah.
silly as saying that. So I'm
I
sorry.
also
Yeah,
had
yeah.
sorry, no, I also
Please.
had one of the interviewees I spoke with who very astutely pointed out that like why is there an anti-Semitism task force in school, but there isn't like a Islamophobia task force? Because
Mm,
that was really put out very early on, like the
yeah.
anti-Semitic task force, but it just felt like that similar right was not extended
Yeah,
to
that's
the
no.
Muslim
You're
students on
absolutely right.
campus.
Congress just passed that bill, right? The anti-Semitism bill and the land of free speech. Can you imagine the land of free speech? And you know, this one. I mean, you don't have to say anything to this, but I'm just saying this as
Yeah,
a political analyst, right? And for the past few years, we've heard ad nauseum Republicans and the right, the conservatives say complaining about cancel culture, and I think on to some extent they were right that it did go very far, but now they are the first people to cancel, right? And then on the other hand, Democrats were saying pro-democracy, we need to protect student, we need right to protest and so on, but now they are doing the exact same things that they accuse Trump of doing, right? So there's a lot of hypocrisy to go around, right? And Mark Lamont
yeah,
Hill and Michelle Plitnick wrote the book, right? except for Palestine. All these ideals apply everywhere except for Palestine, and they wrote this many years ago, not in October. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
I
I
did,
think
yeah.
it's a shame. Yeah, please.
Yeah. No, I did also just want to add, I think like when you mentioned that, it made me think because we did have quite a few very prominent figures who did come into our campus during the protest because the Gaza Solidarity encampment on our campus was really the first. And we had, I think, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson and his team also really just come in and something he said really inflammatory remarks that I
Yeah.
think made him get booed by the students, but something that
Yeah.
he said was that like, yeah, that there is an appropriate time for the National Guard to come.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just
Yeah. I
like
mean,
he was later accused of like politicizing the situation. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, to be fair to Mike Johnson, he's a bit of a
Yeah.
buffoon. He's not the smartest guy around. So, I
Mm.
mean, I'm sure he probably doesn't even realize his own contradiction. But yeah, it's shameless, these people doing. There's a question from Lian. Did you see professors, the faculty forming a human shield too?
I think they did. So I wasn't there during the first arrest, but I did see photos and videos that they did, and also in the subsequent days when there were news that the encampment was going to be closed, there were lots of faculty members who came down. They were wearing like yellow vests, and they were there in sort of in the name of de-escalation. But really, when I talked to them, they said like they just wanted to be here for the students and to really protect them, because they're fighting for a cause that they see is meaningful and it's in line with their First Amendment rights to be able to speak up about it on campus. So that's why the professors are there. And I think not only faculty, some of the people I spoke with, they were like PhD students who were TAs of undergrad students, and they also showed up for their undergrad students because
Right.
they wanted to just be a part of it and to also protect them. Yeah.
And that's really saying something, right? I mean, there are levels of risk, right? And I think the PhD students doing it, I mean, they are perhaps most at risk.
Yeah,
So that's really something. And for the
sure.
faculty, for the professors, if they are junior, then that means a lot as well. So Kit
Yeah.
asks, so Kit is in the States as well.
Mm.
So Kit asks, what about chants like Intifada, Revolution, or October 7 will be every day, which I haven't heard of until now. So Intifada basically refers to a revolution, right? So Intifada revolution. So
Yep.
so her question is, have Jewish students voiced concerns against those?
Yeah. So I have spoken with one of the pro-Israeli protesters that were on site, and he did voice concerns, especially about the Intifada revolution um, chant, because I think he mentioned that one of his family members was killed in the second Intifada, and he sort of pointed out, he wasn't sure if the protesters actually are cognizant of what they are chanting and what they are saying. So I do think that there are people who have concerns about it. Yeah, but like I said, when I was on the encampment, I really did hear attempts by like the organizers and like people who were Palestinian students to educate everybody on what they were actually chanting. So it wasn't sort of like a blind just chanting. I think people who
Right.
were saying they really knew what they were talking about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I guess, I mean, Mehdi Hassan had this exchange with Piers Morgan on Intifada, right? And what it meant, basically. So, the American Revolution was an Intifada of sorts, right? It's just using the English language.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. So, what about the other one that Kate mentioned? So,
I actually didn't hear that one.
yeah, I didn't
I'm
hear.
not sure if
So,
just
Kate, maybe if you could explain a little bit more. Yeah. So I've never heard of that as well. I mean, just on the surface of it, that did sound a bit disturbing. But a broader question, right? A broader question on the pro-Israeli students, because there will be a lot of them as well, right? Maybe not as many, or as not as many would be as open about it.
yeah.
But how did they come into the picture?
Mm, I think it was a mixed bag. I don't feel like you said that the post-ready students were as prominent. I actually felt that some of my friends actually did disappear from campus, like chose opted not to show up. And there were articles that were coming out of the Columbia Spectator, which is our school's undergraduate news publication that is really, really great. They um they did say that there were Israeli pro-Israeli students or Israeli students who chose to just move out of school because they felt unsafe. Yeah, so I think it is a sentiment that's not unfelt as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So there definitely are those. I guess the situation, I guess, for faculty or for professors or the administration is how do you balance the students' right to demonstrate under the US Constitution or supposed right versus making these other students feel safe. But the feeling of feeling unsafe, right? That also can be used a little bit loosely, right? Because if the
Yeah.
protesters are not doing anything unsafe,
Yeah.
then if you feel unsafe, that's on you, right? So the question isn't really like how other people feel, right?
Yeah.
The question is what was done. Would you agree with that? Or
Could you repeat the
yeah, so I mean,
question?
I'm not sure how much it matters if people feel unsafe if the protesters are not doing anything unsafe. That's my point, like, right?
Yeah, I think I think they were really sort of just on the lawn and really not infringing. They were really not infringing, especially I think with regards to the first encampment that they called the NYPD on. It was so quiet. It was literally, it looked like, I don't know, it was just quiet, and there were like something like 20 green tents and a few stray signs, and it was so unthreatening. And it was really just them putting out, like, putting their foot down, making a statement, but it was not threatening at all. So
Right.
I think, especially the first NYPD arrest, there's been a consensus among everybody that I've spoken with that it's just very uncalled for
Right.
because nobody was really at risk. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And you know what's really unsafe? What's really, really unsafe? Living under occupation is unsafe. Living under the possibility of being bombed, that's really, really unsafe. Right?
For sure.
So there's,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
please, yeah.
yeah, no, and I think people also drew parallels of sort of the policing of protests with like the war back in Palestine, because I think the police presence around our school was insane. Like it was really, really a lot. And to date, like I just graduated and I'm walking around a campus where there are NYPD officers everywhere. Well,
Really?
not
Oh, even
everywhere
to oh,
anymore,
because of
but
the
there are,
commencement. Okay.
yeah, there are still multiple officers walking around school, and it just creates this very dystopian atmosphere where like we as students also don't feel safe on our campus. And a lot of the people I've spoken with have said that the main place where the main cause of their feelings that of like unsafety on campus has really actually just been the fact that it's been so policed. We have like police helicopters flying overhead, and you can
Wow.
hear the chopper sounds.
Really?
Yeah, there
Oh,
are drones flying over our school, and I think one of the people I interviewed was saying that she saw a drone that was pointed at the student dorm. And yeah, I think it's just all those feelings of being policed and being
my
watched that makes students
goodness.
feel unsafe. Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. It's crazy, right? Land of the free, right?
Yeah.
So easily people can abandon their stated principles. So this Debbie has a couple of questions. What happens to the students that were arrested? Have you heard anything, or have you seen any
Right.
reporting about that? Whether it will be dismissed? Because I know in some universities it has been dismissed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the students who were arrested, well, there were two arrests. I guess for the
Yeah.
second arrest, like the Hein Hall arrest, I know that most of the students were released with a charge of criminal trespassing. Yeah. So it's I think something called like a second degree misdemeanor. So
Okay.
it's not too
Right. So as long
severe.
as it's not
Yeah.
a felony,
It's not a felony.
it's
Yeah.
okay, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a
All right.
felony. So they were released. As to whether or not they were eventually expelled, that I'm not too sure. Yeah, as for the first round of protests, those who were suspended, there was a group of about 50 students from Barnard, which is like the female-only college associated with Columbia. They were initially kicked off campus,
Wow.
totally. Yeah, but I think after a while, like as I mentioned, they had the conditional amnesty extended to them, and I think many of them were able to come back. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of my knowledge about the US legal system comes from Law and Order SVU. So that's how I know
That's
felony
right.
and misdemeanor. Okay. So did you see any conversation or discussion between the pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian protesters? Did you witness it?
Just
Question from
just
Debbie. Yeah.
That's interesting because there was one day that I was standing around the periphery of the encampment, and there was a Barnett student who came up to me, and then we just started talking about the encampment. And then a while later, there was a staff member who joined, and I think she's Israeli, yeah, and she opposes she opposes the war, but she also said something like about how she felt like, left wing, a lot of these left wing protests, like it erodes the nuance and sometimes it makes it harder for conversations to happen. Yeah,
Which is fair, I think. I
yeah,
think that is
yeah,
true.
which is
I
fair.
think that is true,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that a lot of these spontaneous conversations do come up a lot more because of the thing happening on the lawn, and I can't imagine having had a conversation about Israel and Palestine and campus protests with
Right,
two random members of the school
right.
committee who not for this. Yeah, so it's like ironical,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But I actually would like if you or Debbie or anybody or
Mm,
Kate, anyone knows a pro-Israeli person who wants to come on and have a conversation with me, I would be happy to have a civil conversation on the issue. I do agree. I think that a lot of times conversations are not nuanced, but
mm,
we also I think cannot use nuance as an excuse for not for moderation and not taking a people say, oh, let's not be polarizing, right? Let's come to the middle. What is the middle ground here? Like if there's the occupier versus the occupied, what is the middle ground here?
mm,
If there's people killing innocent people versus people being killed, what is the middle ground, right? What is the nuance that is needed? Sometimes it's not sophisticated. You don't need, it's not rocket science. You don't need PhDs to understand these things, right? PhD in Palestinian history or Middle East politics.
mm,
So Leanne said that AJ Plus said that these student protests were powerful as some students had parents in high places. Did you get that sense, or do you
mm.
think this was not working class, but it's a less powerful bunch of students versus the elites, or was it more of a mixed bunch?
Mm. I would say I think it's a mixed bunch, but I did meet plenty of students who were on the Gaza Solidarity encampment who were people of color or non-binary individuals who, um, and also people who were maybe from like low-income families who were there and were there in spite of, risking their visa status.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say I think it's a mixed bag. And with regards to having their parents in high places, that I don't feel like I'm able to speak to. I
Okay,
think
yeah.
yeah, but I am certain that I think this would spark conversations at home as well because I think of like how widely publicized this issue has. I know a lot of the protesters that I spoke with also have had like conversations with their parents about their presence, about being on the Gaza Solidarity
Your
campus itself. So
parents were
yeah,
flew over, right? Yesterday, or
my parents, yeah, they flew
have
over a while
have you
ago.
had conversations with them?
I have, but I think they are quite alright with me being on the encampment, mainly because I'm there in the capacity of a reporter. So it's
Okay.
not, like I'm not putting my
Yeah.
student status at risk. Yeah, but like many of these students are. Yeah.
Yeah, I know my parents. My dad has passed on, but my mom is still around, and they are very pro Palestine. But they wouldn't want me to to
Mm,
join, right? The demonstration. A typical Singaporean parent. They don't even want me to talk about it publicly, right? They're
no,
worried about
fair.
things that can happen. Yeah.
No, but the surveillance was so bad that I wouldn't even say it's like a Singaporean thing or like a Asian thing. Like I think for like the better of the 2 weeks, most people walked around in masks because like they were so scared of being dogs. They were so scared of being identified and suspended and kicked out. So I think there was also that
Do,
fear
do you think
amongst
do you
people.
think that takes something away from the protest? Because
Mm,
I have mixed feelings about this.
mm,
I
mm,
understand, I completely understand the practicality of that, but I also feel
mm,
like I don't know. I feel like if you are standing up for this, then you should put yourself out there. So I have a
mm.
bit of mixed feelings about this. So
I
what do
get
you
that.
think? Yeah.
I think it's something that the student protesters, organizers have always said is that like, okay, we know that there are varying risk levels for people who are here. You know, like let's say if you're here on a visa and you really, really have like some people are like first gen students, like first generation to make it to university, and them being continually enrolled in the school actually really does mean a lot. So it's the organizers do sort of leave it to the individual, whether like how much they want to show like and how much they
Yeah.
want to identify themselves. But we do have students who are very outspoken and are like very, very happy to sort of speak to members of the press or really just be very happily like walking around
Yeah.
like without any sort of coverage on their face. Yeah, but I think it's a personal decision to make.
Definitely, for
Yeah.
sure. But I also can see that, this will be fodder for Fox News and so on, right? And I do think that it's important for the students to speak to mainstream media. I mean, and that's why I wanted to go, next that mainstream media in the US has been awful. I mean, they've always been pretty biased on Israel, Palestine, but this time round it was when I saw the coverage by, I mean, okay, Piers Morgan is not a journalist, right? I mean, he's not really a journalist. Uh, but I mean, okay, Morning Joe as well. Both of them, like husband and wife, are terrible. They were terrible on this. Dana Bash from CNN, she did an awful piece on this. I don't know whether you saw that, the editorial
I have to
piece.
see.
Yeah, it was so bad. Like just depicting the protesters as anti-Semitic. And I just saw Bill Maher, Bill Maher, the comedian. I just saw him a couple of days ago, and he said on his podcast, he said, "Oh, these students are pro Hamas," and the other comedian, Bill Burr, was saying, "Oh, no, they are pro-Palestine." And I said, "No, that's the same thing, right?" And I feel Bilma was saying, and they have just been shameful, right? So what explains that? What explains that? And what explains the disconnect? Right? So do you believe like it's cognitive dissonance for you? On one hand, as a journalist, you are reporting it one way. On the other, the most trusted journalistic outlets, quote unquote, are reporting it completely another way. How do you feel as a
Oh,
journalist
for
who's on the
sure.
ground?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of the student press members have felt. But I also wanted to caveat that I think the school had put in place press hours. So essentially, members of the external press can only come in from 2 to 4 p.m. Like each day, the doors will be open and then they'll come in and then they'll really just flood in and then at 4 p.m. they'll have to leave. So in like thinking from their perspective, I think it will also be quite hard to, get a very accurate sensing of what's
Sure,
happening on the ground, given
sure.
that everybody's scrambling to try to get a student to speak with, and like people on the encampment had certain media trained individuals that they would, rather push to talk to the press.
Sure.
Yeah. So I do empathize that I think it's pretty difficult to report on, but as for the student journalists, like we had sort of unfettered access, like 24/7. We could be there. Some of us, knew people on the encampment, so that gave us like slightly better access, and we could really go down and talk to people, and build trust like over the days and get more in-depth reporting out. Yeah, so I think it's a little bit natural that our reporting was more nuanced because we really had more time to spend there. But as to the larger messages of like bias in the US media, I do think it's true as well. I was reading there's this non-profit media outlet called The Intercept.
Oh yeah,
So they found that,
Intercept. They
yeah,
did. I love Ryan Graham, and yeah, I love the
they're
Intercept. Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
So I
They're
think they
good.
did this piece on how Western media coverage of the Israel-Palestine war tends to skew pro-Israel. And I was thinking about it and I felt that like, like in a very similar line, like the coverage on the US campus protest does also parallel that. Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
Intercept has done exposés on even the New York Times initial reporting about the sexual assault on 7 October and so on. The Intercept has done really really good reporting. It's one of my go-tos. Do you watch Breaking Points by any chance?
the
So Ryan Grimm hosts the weekend edition of Breaking Points, but
Mm.
It's hosted by two journalists, one a populist lefty, another a
Yeah.
populist conservative. So
Mm.
Saga and Jetty and Crystal Ball.
Interesting.
So I love
Mm.
it. I love it. So they always give, I think, better takes than mainstream media in the States.
Yep.
So there's a question here. Um, Maybe actually I'm better placed to answer this question before we get to the other one,
Yep.
which is what what can Singaporean university students learn from this, right? Well, obviously the political culture is different in terms of the legality as well. I mean, protest is the lifeblood of American political culture, right? Protest. But I mean, Singapore is illegal, so you shouldn't expect. I don't want students to do that, right? On the campuses and so on. So obviously there will be different. But what maybe broadly speaking, do you think there is something that they can learn? Like not so much like organizing protest, but in
Mm.
terms of thinking about things.
Do you mean like the student body or like?
Yes, students in Singapore
Mm.
can learn from how students are.
Oh.
Is it a higher
Mm.
degree of social consciousness
I do
over
think
there?
so. And I think it's maybe sort of the way people grow up also. Like it's different. I think because my cousin, like two of my cousins grew up here and I was just having a conversation with them because they're American and then they were saying sort of like even the way that university curriculums are structured with many colleges having things like the common curriculum and you have to study things like philosophy and art history even if you're a science major even if you're an engineering major and that builds sort of a certain degree of social consciousness and investment in
Right,
what's happening in your society and around the world and people are very happy to speak out about that like everybody has an opinion on something and they're very happy to share it which
right,
is something that I find admirable and also makes my job a lot easier as a journalist
right,
because people are
right.
just willing to talk to you and and yeah, I think even not just from this instance, but through my reporting through the year, like many of the locals that I've spoken with have said that like, oh, my parents since young have encouraged me to think of like what matters to me and to speak up actively about it. And I think that's just not something that I've grown up experiencing in my own family. So and I think it's good to have that level of societal consciousness and awareness, like to be an active citizen. Like it doesn't matter if you're engaged directly in like whether or not you're engaged directly in the field like you, but like to just know to like be
Yeah.
able to converse and talk about it, I think makes a lot of a difference. Yeah.
100%. And caring about things beyond yourself, right? I think it also makes you a fuller human being, gives you something bigger to live for also, other than just your own narrow concerns.
Mm.
Any sense of next steps from pro-Palestinian groups on campus, given that the academic year is coming to an end?
Mm.
Summer break is coming, so
Some break is
yeah,
coming. I mean, as of now, our campus is still on semi-lockdown. So like people aren't really there are security
leaving.
guards at the front gates. I think only a few days ago did they lift the requirement lift like the security a bit more and allow current students to go back. So just for some context, I think most of us were locked out of campus for the last week or two. We weren't able to finish up lessons in school.
Oh,
Um yeah, we weren't. And I think the university president was saying that this is to ensure that there's safety and so that they can have commencement for like commencement graduation ceremonies, but eventually that was also cancelled. Yeah, but
yeah.
for the pro-Palestinian groups next steps, like I'm frankly not sure, but I just wanted to um I was thinking actually about what was the thought process behind taking Heinz Hall um, and I think they refer a lot to Colombia's history of protests and civil and speaking out. And I think in the last protest that was on this scale and that had this a scale of arrest was the 1968 Columbia University protest. And I think then they were also trying to fight for divestment, but it was a very similar timeline. They also took Hamilton Hall, and I think they eventually managed to change the university's minds in the fall. Like the university had been moved to divest in the fall. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. By the way, is it Hines Hall or Hines Hall? Is that's how you call it? Is it the Columbia students call it
I
Hines
think we
Hall?
we call it Hein, but it might be
Okay,
me mispronouncing it. Yeah.
okay, right. Yeah, because it was named after the Palestinian, right?
Mm.
Hind Rajab. Yeah, but anyway, so
Yes,
yeah,
it could be just
yeah.
me. I
No.
apologize. Yeah.
I've heard Heinz Hall all throughout. So
Uh,
I was just wondering, maybe, yeah, maybe I'm the one misreading. So there's a question here: how can parents support their children who are university students? I'm assuming you're asking about the state. So do you have anything to say about that? Or how
mm, I think
could parents, yeah, other than more money?
I think honestly just being willing to hear your kids out, like that since your kids have received like an education here and have developed certain I guess thoughts and ideals and things that they want to fight for, to just be willing to hear them out and listen to their perspectives as well. Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, so I mean, there's a question here by Kate. I don't think it's more of a rhetorical question. I think, how is Shafiq still in office? I think she's precisely the person that they want to put out there in this kind of crisis, right? I mean, PR wise, that would be great for them. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to ask, as in just we are going to wrap up soon, right?
Mm.
So you wrote that you've written a few articles, but one of it was in Straits Times. So
Yeah.
can you just speak to how easy was it to publish? Because a lot of people think that Straits Times is biased and so on. I don't necessarily think on this issue there is a bias in this particular
Mm.
time on the Straits Times. So can you just speak to that? But I have no inside information.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, I was very happy that you took up the piece, and I think that it was actually quite a smooth and good process working with the Straits Times editors. And the sentiment that I got was that they also really wanted to do justice to what was happening on the ground and to be truthful to that. So that was something that I was very grateful for as well. And um, yeah, I think when I worked with them, they did mention to try to get a variety of voices because the previous piece that I did with Hellgate was more spotlighting student voices, like from the Gaza Solidarity Encampment. So it was like portraits and interviews, like in-depth interviews with 5 of the student protesters. So in that way, it was very pro-Palestinian, an article. And I think the Straits Times wanted also like pro-Israeli voices as well as like voices of Singaporeans or other people on campus who may not have been involved in the protests themselves, but would just like to just speak to how their student experience has been shaped or changed in any way by like the student protests happening in their lawn. Yeah, so I think it's trying to sort of like step back and taking a more objective viewpoint, which I think is good as well. Yeah.
Okay, good. So for my viewers, please don't be too harsh on the Straits Times.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So final question, I suppose. Well, two questions. One is more personal. So, how has this been life-changing for you, this particular experience like this? The past, is it a 2-year course over there,
No,
or is
it's
it
like
what?
nine and
Okay,
three
so
quarter
1 year, yeah.
months.
So
Yeah, really.
has the past year been life-changing for you in any way, many ways?
Yeah, I think for sure. I feel like the reason I chose to come here to study journalism was also because um, it's practiced on like held to very high standards here, and I think the purpose of the profession is very salient and very recognized by members of the society in that it's essential to
Mm,
uphold democracy, to have good journalism, and there's a lot of cognizance of its necessity in check and balance and holding
indeed.
systems and people in power like to account, and sort of the field of like investigative journalism is something that's very big and very respected here, and that's something that I've come to really really appreciate. Yeah, and with regards to just reporting on the campus, I feel like it's been a very interesting experience. I don't think I've fully processed it, and I think coming from Singapore, like
Yeah,
I felt very much, yeah,
it's
I
from
felt very
zero to
much like,
100, like from nothing, like no
yeah,
form of activism to suddenly. Yeah.
I felt very much like a fish out of
Right.
water sometimes. Yeah, but it was definitely very, very interesting to see how like discourse and activism can manifest in sometimes productive ways. Yeah, but it's definitely very interesting to report on. And yeah.
Okay. So just on a personal note, what's next for you now that you've graduated?
Mm, I think for now I'm going to stay in the US for the summer to freelance. I have a few pieces that I need to tie up, and I also have a job with the school for the summer. So I'll be here continuing to report. I think that there would definitely be movement in terms of the campus protests here, like whether it be on like Columbia's campuses or like other campuses in New York and the US, and that's something that I hope to pay attention to and like
Oh,
continue
so
reporting
so
on.
you are intending to go around the country and cover those protests as well?
I'm not sure about around the country, but definitely at least around New York, because I think definitely the student movement is still there. Yeah, maybe it's just dormant now, but I know it's still there. And like, given that I have spoken with some sources, I do on the encampment. Then I do plan to follow up with them and see, um, yeah, what are their next steps and their next plans as well. Yeah, and also just to get more insights from them after this has like the dust has all like settled a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Angelica. It
Thank
was
you.
an absolute pleasure. I hope more journalists will be like you know, will be as diligent in their reporting with empathy and with a heart. You know, thank you so much for writing the pieces. I absolutely loved your pieces. I went through them, and they were great. I'll be sharing them over the next few days together with this video.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All the best. All the best. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. You
Good night,
too.
everyone. Bye.
No, thank you.